Are we okay? We got to fucking, we've got to do the fucking shit that we for fucking drug abuse. No! Are you listening?
Sean here, and just a trigger warning for anyone else who was the victim of childhood abuse. I shared my story. Mine is nowhere near as bad as some of the people who might listen to this. So I'm going to be talking about it. I'm going to be talking about it in relationship to Lorne Lynn Armstrong. Talking about this is difficult because Lorne is a liar, and it's almost impossible to tell what the truth is and what's a desperate cry for attention and sympathy. Children who go through this and turn into adults, they don't want to talk about it. And a lot of times it will remain buried until something happens that reminds them or triggers the memory of this event, and they finally have to confront it. Imagine the abuser is someone you know and you trust. Imagine how painful that would be. Someone who was supposed to love and, more importantly, protect you, they're the ones who did this. It's terrifying. Shame, powerlessness, guilt, and any other emotion your brain can conjure to try to deal with this. The perpetrators should be locked up and the key should be lost in the darkest corners of the universe, never to be found again. Children have a loss of innocence, trust, security. Their childhood is essentially gone. Kids are supposed to be nurtured by their parents and their guardians, not molested. Thanks to these people, in the future, victims will have a hard time choosing their own sexual experiences. They've already had their first ones chosen for them. It makes me sick to my stomach, and quite honestly, it makes me emotional because it makes me angry that there are people out there like this. Lorne Armstrong tried to diddle a kid, a 13-year-old girl. That's no excuse. Child sexual abuse would be no excuse for him to do that. So again, I'm not trying to justify anything this guy did. I'm just digging into it because of his claims. Victims will feel guilty that they didn't stop the abuse. I mean, imagine the fear they had and the embarrassment and the guilt. They didn't want to share it with anybody. They didn't want to disclose it. They don't know what the consequences are going to be. They don't know the reactions or what people are going to see them as, how they're going to be perceived. They can't even determine whether or not it was their fault. And that is what's scary, and that's a shame, that they would feel like it was their fault. This is where Lorne, as the abuser, as the one who tried to diddle Kayla, the blame, it's placed firmly on the one who did it. The abuser. The one in the position of authority who abused their trust. They are solely responsible for their actions. This is something that Lorne will never be able to shake, and he should never be able to shake, because he is a piece of shit. Lorne mentioned his cousin, I believe. It was someone older than him. And he talked about they were experimenting with each other, but of course to Lorne, because he's homophobic, he would instantly deny that, instantly try and push that off as something other than what it was. In that situation, Lorne would likely have felt maybe confused and ashamed, because the body, regardless of whether it's wanted or not, there are certain things you can do, and this is gross, I know, that your body will be stimulated, further confusing the victim of the abuse. Likely, after this happens, they will seek as much affection or some kind of validation, demonstrations of affection, love, I guess affirmations. So it is the parents' job, the parents' duty to teach these kids about boundaries and to teach the kids about, well, I guess you would say appropriate boundaries. And the reason I say that is because if this had happened and Lorne was the victim of abuse, yeah, he might see it as normalized behavior. But it's obvious if he was the victim of abuse that no one taught him about appropriate boundaries. No one taught him what is right or wrong or had a lengthy discussion about it. And to be honest with you, I could see Mama Gwen dismissing it. Oh, I don't want to hear that crap. Lorne, I don't want to hear that crap. If you want to go play tiddlywinks, and I know that may sound like I'm joking, but that sounds like something Mama Gwen would say, and she could have easily dismissed it. And this really could have damaged Lorne if this was true. One of the emotions we see in Lorne a lot is anger. This is a very common issue for adult survivors of sexual assault as a child. Yes, there are other forms of abuse, but we're talking about sexual abuse, and this is prevalent. They spent years trying to block out those emotions that may be springing up from what happened. They spent years trying to block out the experience in itself, trying to reason out why it happened, and it can all just come bubbling over. Anger is natural for what happened to a victim of sexual abuse. You have to get in touch with it and you have to address it. And if you were married to Lorne and this was true and you listened to my how to deal with the anger issues, you can see someone with anger issues not rooted in sexual abuse as a child. You can see how difficult it would be. Now magnify that because of the traumatic experience they would have been through. If this was true, it would explain a little bit of why Lorne is so angry and desperate for affection and attention all the time. Again, Lorne is a compulsive liar, and I think he was experimenting because the way he's described it, but I'm doing this pretending, going on the premise that it was not. Lorne talks about trust a lot. Won't be honest with you. Be honest with me. Be honest, Ramona. Be honest, Winnie. Be honest, Kayla. He has trust issues with everyone. And yeah, that's paranoia and insecurity. But again, we're talking about if Lorne was truly a victim of childhood sexual abuse. Feeling he was vulnerable, feeling like he would be a victim of something, anything again, because he remembered how horrible that feeling was. Childhood sexual abuse victims, they have massive trust issues. They remember the hurt, the confusion, the shame, the guilt, the pain, and the isolation from what happened to them. And they never want to feel it again with anything. Couple that with Lorne's stupidity and his inability to see who's real and who's not. He's just asking for trust issues. See, as an adult, we have the privilege to choose who we are friends with. Maybe not our coworkers. We can't always control that. But our friends, yes. And if you have family members who keep you miserable, you don't have to deal with them. There is nothing wrong with that. Your misplaced sense of loyalty. If you're a childhood sexual abuse victim and your family did not support you during that time, and it is a traumatic memory for you, something you're constantly dealing with, PTSD, you may need to leave and find some people who will talk to you about it, who will be supportive. Yes, it's after the fact, and yes, it already happened, and you can forgive them, but you're going to have to move forward because you don't have to have them in your life. Intimacy issues are another hallmark of survivors of childhood sexual abuse. Intimacy is when you establish that closeness, that close bond with somebody else. And you hear a lot of this terminology come out of Lorne's mouth, but, could be hallmark stuff. I don't know. I really don't know what happened in Lorne's childhood, but again, we're doing this as if something happened. It's frightening for them to try to get close to someone because people that were supposed to love and protect them did something unforgivable. Intimacy, it takes trust, love, respect, You have to be able to listen and be listened to, share things with other people. And that's difficult when the people you once shared things with, the people you felt like were watching over you, they violated you. They violated that trust and that closeness. You can't reverse that. And it will stay with victims for life. Clinginess. Finding somebody you do trust that can give you all of those things and hanging on to them for dear life because you're terrified you're going to lose them. Because of the betrayal you still feel. Because of the PTSD. I have no idea if that's why Lorne is so clingy. But I'm just, again, reminding you he's a compulsive liar, but he did make these claims. If this was true, his first sexual experience was either incest, we're talking about one of his relatives, or it was sexual assault, or the R word, which I don't really want to say. That is a trigger word. Any kind of sexual activity for him after that would probably trigger those memories. And if it was another male that did this, the homophobia, that could be explained. His hatred for that kind of interaction, because maybe it wasn't experimentation, maybe it was real. It would be very difficult for Lorne to engage in any kind of sexual interaction, because when he did, he could be reminded while he's with a woman of that unwanted interaction with another male. The conflict there would be great, and it would destroy any kind of pleasure he could possibly derive from it, anything that he could get out of it that would make him happy. Lorne wouldn't be smart enough to communicate with whoever it is that he's trying to have a sexual relationship with, to explain to them, this is what happened to me. I'm sharing this with you because I don't want you to think it's me going to say, it's not you, it's me. I want to be able to share this with you so you know that I am not avoiding sex with you. This is why I have issues with intimacy. This is why getting into these sexual situations is difficult for me. Sex is a shared experience and should be a shared experience. So if this was true, I don't know why he would go after a 13-year-old girl and groom her for a month. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment thing where he sees a 13-year-old girl and they immediately jump into bed. This is Lorne for an entire month doing what he did, saying what he said, and making him one of the most hated predators from the show. People that were the victim of childhood sexual abuse, they can self-destruct. One of the questions, one of the dilemmas they have is, do I forgive my abuser or do I not? If all you do is focus on what happened to you and the injustice, and if you have fantasies of revenge and you think about what you endured constantly, if those feelings are left unchecked, you will self-destruct. The person you need to forgive is yourself. And I don't mean that it's your fault. If I was to tell Lorne, I'd be like, you have to forgive yourself because you didn't put yourself in that situation. Any of those negative feelings you are feeling, they are not your fault. They are the fault of someone else. So if you feel those and you feel that it is somehow your fault, then forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for allowing yourself to feel that you weren't the victim, even if it's in just a small way. And I hope that makes sense. This is a very difficult subject to talk about, and I could go into greater detail, but we're talking about Lorne and his claims of being a sexual abuse victim. I would also tell Lorne that you're safe now. You are safe, and everything that you are supposedly dealing with, and if you really are dealing with it, that's all in the past. Those are memories. Those are things that are, you can't reach out and touch them. They're not tangible. They're in the past, and yes, they are painful. Yes, they are. I understand that, Lorne. But you're safe. And all of that behavior you might be blaming on whatever it is that you said happened to you. You have to let it go. You have to move forward because you're living in it. And if he really was then we're seeing him live in it right now. Yes, social factors, but again, I'm going on the compulsive liar's claims that he was sexually abused. Those are just my thoughts, and I will make a longer video in the future on this. I have done more research, but I wanted to make something that just touched on it, and something that looked at what Lorne would be like had he been, or if he really is, the victim of childhood sexual abuse. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know what you guys think, because he's a liar. It's impossible to tell anything that comes. If his tongue was notarized, I would still have to question it. I would still have to get more proof, because he is a liar. Anyways, I'm sorry if this was too heavy. I love you guys. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you are the victim of childhood sexual abuse, don't be afraid to go get counseling. Don't be afraid to go see a therapist. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody that you know cares about you. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one.